Appreciate everyone joining us today, both the panelists as well as the attendees. We are here today to talk about the process of taking a private label brand and moving it from not just selling on Amazon, but expanding it also into a DTC channel. For many brands, Amazon is the natural place to start e-commerce sales. While there are a lot of customers obviously in this marketplace, there are long-term challenges in focusing exclusively on this channel. Challenges that encourage brands to diversify into other e-commerce channels like DTC, Shopify, BigCommerce, Magento, and so on and so forth. Today, we're going to examine why, when, and how Amazon-centric brands are making that jump into DTC. We're going to discuss what preparations are needed to be done before extending into DTC, and what new skills and expectations brands need to develop in order to make that shift and make it in a way that they feel like they're actually achieving some level of hopefully positive experience. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce our group of esteemed guests. I'm going to start with Mikhail Baumwald-Oram, who is the CEO and co-founder of Fortunet, an M&A firm that specializes in helping online brands with a potential exit. We're also joined by Jin Chan, who is a successful entrepreneur who has built a household brand that was able to be not only a top seller on Amazon, but then able to diversify into a DTC channel and find success there. We're joined today by Colin Foster, who is the CEO and founder of Brainpower, an agency that specializes specifically in helping brands that have started on channels like Amazon make that jump successfully into DTC. And we're also joined by Ruben Amar. Ruben is the president and co-founder of Forum Brands, a high-growth consumer products company operating a portfolio of brands that takes care of families. I thank you all for joining us today. Looking forward to a lively conversation. Having spent so many years of my career focused exclusively on Amazon, as we start to think about what it takes to be successful beyond Amazon, what's the language of success look like when you move beyond Amazon? What are the things you need to think about in terms of what success looks like, what success doesn't look like? What are the skills that you need to have? And what do you need to do in order to be in a position where you can actually say, we have achieved a level of success in DTC that makes sense and is complementary to what we're trying to do in our Amazon channel? I'd like to start by asking a kind of an open-ended question. And certainly something that I've talked to some of the panelists beforehand about, this question of not all brands necessarily are cut out to be brands that would make sense in a DTC channel. So I'd love to understand a little bit more about how do you figure out if your brand is actually suitable to move beyond the Amazon channels of the world and move into a DTC channel? How do you screen whether your brand, in fact, is made, it has the right characteristics to be cut out for a DTC channel? And if it's not successful, what are the kinds of things that maybe you can do to make your brand more ready for potential expansion into a DTC channel? Well, let me start by asking you, Jen. You've made that jump from Amazon into DTC. Tell us a little bit about what went through the thinking process around, okay, now we're ready to expand beyond Amazon. DTC is the place we want to be.
Sure. So an interesting kind of history piece is my brother and I were business partners. We actually started on D2C before we ever came to Amazon in a different capacity. And so we kind of have knowledge of the space. And we saw really Amazon as a platform where you could actually create a brand that would then be sought out on D2C as well. So I think we kind of had that in mind before we started. And then the other thing I would say is, the top thing is you need to have USP. Something has to be different. You can't just be a Me Too product. You can't just be something you picked off the shelf at Canton Fair and said, I'm going to sell this, right? Because it's a commodity product. You want something to be so different about your product that people are going to know you for that factor, right? And whatever that X factor is, that's what it's kind of, I think, inherent in the DNA of what your brand is. Brand isn't a name that you put on a product, right? Brand is an ethos, it's an identity, it's DNA of how you create products and why you bring them to market and part of the storytelling. And I think that's when you can go to D2C, because otherwise people are just searching silicone spatula, not OXO, right?
Yeah. Ruben, you manage a portfolio of different brands. How did you make that decision if there were some of your brands that you wanted to look at DTC expansion?
Yeah. So as mentioned by the introduction, we buy businesses and then grow them. And as you think about the growth piece, it really comes down to understanding the equity value, the brand recognition of the brand we are acquiring. One of the most interesting advantage that you have on Amazon that you don't have on Shopify is what I would consider trust. Amazon has already built the trust of consumers. While when you operate your own Shopify store, or if you use other than Shopify,
Yes.
you don't really have that trust. You need to gain it. And so the real question comes down to, can these brands gain the trust from consumers who are Googling around and not going to Amazon? And so here you really need to look at the content of the brand we acquire. Is there a story? Is the brand targeting a consumer persona or not? Does it have followership on social media? Does it have enough, UGC for you to be able to create momentum? And so all of those questions, typically an Amazon brand does not really ask themselves because they're just selling on a platform that is already up and running with enough volume and traffic. On Shopify, you think very differently. And so every single brand we acquire, and as we build our kind of like 6 months to 18 months operating plan, those are the things we're looking at diligence, so that we know where we are going to allocate our efforts on Amazon only, on Shopify only, on both.
Colin, you run an agency that specifically helps brands think about how to become more sophisticated so that they can make that jump to DTC. Tell us a little bit about how you work with prospective clients around that decision on, are you in fact ready to make that big jump?
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because my functional role at the agency is director of brand selection when it comes to this. So this is literally what I talk about and see every day. And Jen actually hit it right on the head. And it starts out with the product. A USP is like the anchor, because you have to really understand the dynamic between a demand creation model and a demand capture model, right? Amazon is demand capture. So it's warm traffic, it's high intent, it's
Yep.
very commoditized. It's a landscape where if you don't have a product that is, that's going to really nurture a demand creation model with a strong USP, the ability to create offers, healthy margins, other products that you can upsell and cross sell to increase average order value. It's very rare that I find an Amazon brand, a brand that's native to Amazon, I would probably say, that is basically a one SKU brand and is really, really going to hit it out of the park with D2C. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying it's very rare, because in the landscape of D2C, especially right now with the cost of traffic, it's one of those things where you have to have a consumable as well in a lot of cases, or some sort of product line to continuously like drive LTV, because that's going to be your model probably on the D2C landscape. So, what type of assets do you have? It's one of those things where, like Ruben just brought up, there's a lot of components that you have to consider on a platform like Shopify, or like a direct consumer channel, that you wouldn't really necessarily have to be so focused on with Amazon. So one of the aspects of that is understanding, on Amazon, you're competing for keywords. On D2C, with the channels you're using, you're usually competing for attention. So you need to have a really large volume of assets in most cases. You need to have a really solid hero product. You need to have great assets, margins, and again, a strong USP, or what I would look at as a new opportunity to the market, and a new mechanism to support that new opportunity. That's like the baseline for what I start to look at the product level. Then we can get into tons of other stuff, but product wise, like, that's what I'm looking at.
So I build a successful brand on Amazon. I've been successful because I know how to play the organic search game. I know how to play the PPC game. I've done the right things with product packaging and such, and I've been able to build a decent business. If I haven't been thinking about things like unique selling proposition, because I've been thinking more about how to outspend my competitors on advertising, this whole process of having to now sit down and say, what actually makes my product different from everybody else? And can I put a spin on that in a way that is meaningful to consumers? Or am I just fooling myself into believing that somehow this product is wildly better than everything else out there? That's a hard That's a hard step to take. And I want to talk more about that as we go through our conversation today, because we all think our products are special. But at the end of the day, if consumers don't think it's special, or they don't think it's special in a way that matters, then quite frankly, a consumer is probably more inclined to just go on Amazon and check out and see what's there, rather than having to discover a product from scratch on Google and say, okay, I found this e-commerce site. I don't know anything about this company. I don't know anything about how they do business, but a widget's a widget, a widget. So how do you help me think through those differences? It's a hard task to take if you've never had to go through that exercise. So let me start by asking you, Jen. You made that decision to launch your product, that your business that you're in now. You decided to start on Amazon. You had experience prior with DTC. When the time came that you actually had to sit down and say, okay, we think we're ready now for DTC expansion, take me through, what were the conversations you were having? What were the things that you said, we need to prepare certain things that we've never had to have for Amazon?
I think that the conversation started always at the beginning because it was always in mind. We all know in Amazon, you're playing in someone else's sandbox. And that's like one of the biggest risk factors of a Amazon centric business, is that someday someone could come along and be like, you did something wrong, you're done.
Yep.
Right. And so we've always had that in the back of our minds of, we need to figure out how do we own the customer long term. And I think that even from the beginning, we may, or like, whatever was compliant with terms of service at the time, we did to capture whether it's email or phone number or address or some sort of information about the customer, because we wanted to, really truly own the customer. Colin referred to it earlier. We don't actually have a consumable product, but we have a product line that we've built out that we want to increase the LTV of our customers. I don't want you to buy just one thing from me.
Yes.
Acquiring the customer the first time is the most expensive. It's easier to upsell and
Yep.
and keep that customer. It started from the beginning. It continues on today. We literally have conversations constantly about what is different about us. We're constantly looking at the rest of the market and like even pulling up the websites, pulling up the branding and saying, taking a step back and saying, do we stand out? Are we just
Yep.
the same? Are we another Me Too? And it's a constant evolution. I will suggest, there was a great book. It's called Building a Brand Story by Donald Miller. And if you don't have someone internally that has experience in brand building, it's a great step-by-step way to take you through a framework to determine like, what is your brand story? Who is your customer? And kind of help you structure that. Because otherwise, I think for most like Amazon sellers and e-commerce, I call us all carnies. We're a little bit like a carny. We love the flash and the excitement of the sale. And it gives us a little bit of structure to kind of walk through a process to be able to put down onto paper, this is who we are, this is why my product matters, and this is my customer.
Okay, so you figured out what you think you stand for. I want to ask you, Colin, you've got brands who are clients that have, in fact, met the minimum criteria that you believe are necessary in order to go direct to consumer. How do you help them start thinking about this exercise of, well, you have no customers, you need to build traffic. What kinds of traffic do you need to build? How much money should you be planning to build that traffic? How long is it going to take to build that traffic? It's a very different exercise with different skills from anything that was necessary to succeed on Amazon. Colin, I'm sorry, you're muted.
Yeah. So there's two components to that question. Number one is understanding what I would first look at is what bucket does this Amazon seller, because are we talking about like an Amazon native brand? Because there's three buckets that I've seen. The first bucket is a Amazon native seller, somebody who's been selling on Amazon since the beginning, has really no D2C presence whatsoever. They have no pre-existing data. They have very minimal infrastructure. Maybe they have what I would call a placeholder website. That's one Amazon seller. The second is somebody who has a pretty large volume of sales and is probably doing what I would call some trickle sales, like stuff coming from Amazon. People don't really want to buy from Amazon for whatever reason. They go and they buy D2C. So maybe that company's doing about 10 to 12K in spillover traffic. They're usually a high 7-figure to at 8-figure and above brand that has spillover traffic. The third is a kind of a retail brand or a brand that's pretty well established, and their first venture into e-commerce was Amazon. So one of the supplement brands that we work with, they're one of the largest supplement brands in the States. Well, they operate in like 7 different countries, but in retail they're really big. And their first venture into like real high volume e-commerce was selling their product on Amazon. So we have to see, number one, we have to define who we're working with, right? Like if we're discussing a brand in bucket one that has no data, no infrastructure, what we're really trying to establish as a metric for success, which is my first question that I ask once they pass the smell test of does this
Yes.
brand really even have wheels, is what does success look like to you? That's the first question I ask everybody once we get there, because now if that's not aligned, at least from an agency perspective, it doesn't make sense. But a brand one with no existing data, with no history, no sales history on D2C, no proven ad metrics, nothing. My metric for success is, can you sell here? Is this channel even viable? What is baseline cost per acquisition? How does the ad perform? What if we're going to market brand new, you're essentially a startup on D2C, even if you had a pretty decent amount of success on Amazon, at least for expectation management. Number two is, what level of infrastructure do you have? We build ecosystems, is what we call. So like, what ecosystems do we need to build to amplify your message? Because clearly there's something in your message that's working and we can amplify it. That's a little bit different, because that's kind of like taking gas and putting it on a little bit of a spark, right? If you're dealing with a brand that's already, is a retail centric brand, they're making money on Amazon, they're making pretty decent level of money on D2C. Now it's like, how can we accelerate things a little bit faster? How can we be more efficient?
Let's move away from the brand that's already successful in physical retail. I think it's a lovely situation to be in, to already have built brand equity outside of online channels. I'm thinking more for the typical private label brand on Amazon that grew up in e-commerce, grew up in selling through Amazon. Now they're saying, okay, I need to move somewhere else to other channels, because there's a day in the future that I want to sell my brand, and I keep hearing I've got to diversify beyond Amazon because of some of the risks that Jen talked about earlier. Okay, how do I get Google traffic? How do I get Facebook traffic? How do I think about all those kinds of things that today, I'm just doing Amazon PPC, and I've got to think about all those other things. And by the way, not only do I not know where to go, I have no idea how to do the optimization of those types of campaigns. I also have no idea, are there types of free search traffic that I can get external to Amazon? Like, where do I go? Where do I get started? I need 101, the traffic building 101 for external to Amazon.
Well, so one of the first things, and I didn't mean to just jump in, I didn't know if that was still directed at me, but I can give you a good answer for this.
We're going to talk about this as a group, by all means. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. So one of the presentations that I've given multiple times at different events is the question that a lot of people ask is that question: how do I expand from Amazon to Shopify? That's the channel we'll use for this conversation. But for me, the question is not, the first question you should ask is not, how should I expand from Amazon to Shopify? The first question you'd ask is, should I expand from Amazon to Shopify? Because just because you can doesn't mean you should, right?
Okay.
Because I can tell you personally, minimum 8, and I think it's probably 9 out of 10 brands that I speak to should not be moving to a direct to consumer channel if they're an Amazon native brand.
Because
minimum 8 to 10.
Give me the top 2 or 3 reasons why.
Unit economics, right? The margins are decent, but they're not good enough in relation to be in a single product landscape. So if you have a single product, your unit economics better be so dialed in that you can afford a really high cost for acquisition. So that's one thing. Another one is what Jen talked about, which is the anchor of everything, the product selection process, which is they don't have the USP needed to create demand, to actually capture attention. The third thing is they don't have an LTV play, meaning that they don't have other products that they're going to sell to people. The expectation management isn't there, right? Like Amazon can tend to be, it's a little bit more predictable. So somebody might think that they're going to put in $1 and they're going to get out 5 because that's what they're trained to do. But I can look at a product and be like, you're selling, a heart supplement, right? With no strong USP, you're going to get hit really hard on customer acquisition. So be ready. So those are like my top 4, just like off the top of my head. But that's what I would say is probably the biggest thing. And that's the question that disqualifies 9. I often feel like the bearer of bad news for a lot of people. Like I find myself telling people like, hey, I'm not saying you have a bad brand. You know what I mean? And they're not defensive or anything, but I just feel kind of bad telling people like, don't pay my agency, don't pay any agency to do this, because I can tell you that you're gonna burn money for a fact.
It's okay, Colin. I used to be the same guy who had to do it to brands, telling them don't sell on Amazon. You're never going to make it. So, it's hard to make it, and it's a different set of rules than what you need to do on Amazon. Jen and Ruben, anything else you want to contribute in terms of how do you think about I'm at 0. Now I need to go build traffic external to Amazon. I don't know how to do that. How do I get started?
I think one of the things that I would look at, well, a couple of things. One is growth on Amazon tends to be explosive. If you've had any kernel of success on Amazon, it's generally explosive and almost exponential, and it's really exciting and fun. And I think there's a realistic adjustment of like, listen, when you go D2C, it's going to be slow and steady
Yep.
and painful, and you're going to pay a lot of money for a long time. And then if like the stars align, then you see the increase, and then you see, and so it's like, I think that expectation should be for most is you're not going to put in $1 and make 10. No way. You're probably going to lose money for quite a while. And that's the realistic expectation there. I think the other thing is search your brand. Is there already organic talk about you on the internet? And if you are a top brand in your category, usually there's like literally maybe pages and pages of listicles talking about. If that exists, I think then that's where your inspiration and possible kernel of this is possible for me comes from. And like, I think the other thing is you can run a significant Amazon business with like 3 people, right? Like, I mean, it really doesn't take much to build a true D2C with content, with all of that stuff, like the outreach. And that's just as the strategies and tactics on Amazon evolve, the same for D2C. iOS, I mean, that wiped out a lot of people when those changes came, and people had to evolve. And again, just as much as Amazon is the specialized knowledge engine that you have to keep learning in, D2C is it keeps changing. And so for a while it was pay to play. Now it's like, man, how much in terms of like converting influencers can you get talking about you? So it changes constantly. So it's a significant lift in terms of resources, finances, focus. And you have to ask yourself, like, is this worth it for me? And do I have a kernel of possibility to succeed? It's hard. It's way harder than Amazon. It's a completely different game.
So one of the things that I've been told many times, clients have said to me, if I have 10 extra hours in my week, where am I going to put those 10 extra hours? And most of them will say, well, I'm going to put it back into Amazon because I know I can turn 10 extra hours into significant enough revenue that's worth my time to continue investing in Amazon. What I'm hearing from you is if you find success long-term on DTC, investing your time instead on DTC channel efforts, it may work out, but it's a much longer bet, and one where you have to have already made sure that you've got enough money and margin, you've got enough time that you can continue to subsidize, you've got enough time that you can actually invest in thinking through what you're going to need for this channel. It's kind of a scary exercise to go through when, quite frankly, your Amazon business keeps growing 10, 15, 20% a year, even if you're not doing that much. So if someone said to me, listen, you need to carve out a bunch of time each week and you need to take a bunch of your Amazon margin, you need to put it into this new channel that quite frankly has a low probability of actually being successful anytime in the next 6 months, that's a really scary thing. And oh, by the way, you've already talked to someone like Mikhail and said, I think one day I want to sell my business. And yeah, I haven't diversified, but lo and behold, you're telling me spend the next 12 to 18 months. Hopefully this is going to work. Hopefully long-term, you're going to have diversification of revenue. It's a kind of a scary concept. And I'd love to bring Mikhail into this discussion around when brands are asking you, is this the right time for me to sell? And they've only gone into the Amazon channel. And we're looking at this uphill battle of having to climb long-term, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to get some kind of an off Amazon channel business going. How do you convince people to make that jump when, quite frankly, they just want to sell their business, make their money, and move on?
First of all, I would not convince someone like that to extend out of Amazon to DTC. If this is what you wish for, if you built a business that you want to sell in the short term, relatively short term, you should focus on what you're doing best. Keep on solidify your business based on its current fundamentals, and don't look for adventures that you may not be able to succeed upon. It's a kind of, and I think that in the same context, it's a balance between short-term and long-term decisions. So DTC By the way, I must admit that I enjoyed listening to all of you. I think that the comments here were super interesting, and the discussion is very very helpful. I just don't want that listeners may get the feeling that DTC is kind of a rocket science and something which is out of their achievement. I think that it is doable for the right brands, and I liked a lot the answers that were given here by the panels. What is the brand which is suitable to be expanded into D2C? So first, back to your question, James. First, a seller must know himself. Okay, so what does he want to achieve out of his business? If this is a long-term player or mid-term player even, and they have the right product which is differentiated enough, by the way, either the product or the brand story and positioning, and it has the capacity and cash flow, and it's not a defocus for them to expand to DTC and without sacrificing their existing financial metrics, I would advise them to do so. So there is no one answer good for everyone.
So Ruben, I want to bring you into this discussion. How do you think about, you have multiple brands. Certainly DTC expansion is one way to go, but you could also expand into other channels as well. And so if you bought a brand that may be primarily an Amazon-centric brand, and now you're looking for other channels, how would you think about DTC versus any other type of marketplace or any other kind of brick and mortar channel?
I think everyone said very interesting things around why we should go, why we shouldn't go. For us, really, it comes down to two major things. It's unit economics, and Colin mentioned it earlier. D2C is almost like a battle that takes a little bit of time in the beginning where you lose money. And you need to make sure that you have good enough gross margin to support the investment in marketing and content that will create awareness in the out of Amazon space. But the advantage of Shopify and D2C eventually is that not only you will have diversified revenues, which is great, but I think the most important thing is that you will have a much stronger, and actually you will have a customer relationships, and you will know your customers so much better than on Amazon. And we tend to forget that this is extremely important if you want to scale to 10, 20, $30 million of revenues. Amazon can give you the opportunity to reach those levels, but it will not be as valuable as a DTC company that reaches those levels, because you know your customer better, you can innovate better, you can sell products when they shop. So that's one. And two, at scale, Shopify is more profitable than Amazon, because while at the beginning you need to spend your way up to gain, market trends and awareness, at scale, when you have brand awareness, every unit that you will sell on Shopify will be significantly more profitable because the marketplace unit economics is so significantly better than Amazon. So that's something to remember. Now, to your question on where we go, today we're selling on, of course, DTC. We're selling on 1P marketplaces like Chewy, Babyliss, for example. We're selling also on 3P marketplaces like Target, Walmart. At the end of the day, it really comes down to categories. Some categories are doing better in certain marketplaces than others. So, for example, Walmart is not really well suited to personal care as much as Target is. Baby brands are doing much better on Babyliss and Target versus on Walmart. So we always look at categories, and then we look at unit economics and the content that we already inherited from the sellers we bought the business from, and how much capacity we have to create a story. If we see that we have gross margin that are attractive, that we have already a pretty strong content, and especially content backlog, and that we have some form of followership on Instagram, we will go on D2C. If we see that we don't have one of those three, we will go on other marketplaces. We will not touch D2C, which comes back to Colin's statistics, which is 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10, he will not touch them. It's almost the same ratio for us in our portfolio. Out of, I think probably maybe 10, 15% of our brands we are really investing behind on D2C. all the others have a D2C presence, but they will typically drive traffic to Amazon. So it's more like almost like of a platform to direct traffic to Amazon. On the 10-15% of our brands, we will really invest in building a D2C.
I'm fixated on something you said a moment ago in terms of the types of innovation you're going to use DTC for and your ability to innovate on DTC versus on Amazon. When I think of brands that are on Amazon, a lot of them are excited, especially if they're 3P brands. They're excited about their ability to innovate by way of, oh, let's launch a new product and see if we do a bundle or see if we organize it this way or that way. We fiddle with the price and see what kind of response we get to demand. When you talk about innovation on DTC and you talk about innovation on Amazon, what are the types of innovation that you can get on DTC that are hard to get when you're a 3P brand on Amazon?
Yeah. So I'll answer, and I'm sure that Jim and Colin will have many more opinions about that. But I think you can innovate in the same way. However, you're not as sharp about the innovation that you will have on Shopify versus on Amazon. And let me expand. When you innovate on Amazon and you launch new products, you will typically look at your historical data. You will look at keywords analysis. You will look at some traffic metrics.
Yep.
But very rarely you would look at your consumer. On Shopify, you can, of course, look at all of the above that I just mentioned on Amazon, but the one thing that you can do as well is you can already look at your consumer persona. Where does this consumer shop? What does the metrics tell you about your most representative consumer? And therefore, when you think about innovation, you're not only going to base on data, you will also base your market data, which is Amazon. You will also base your research and your innovation on your consumer data. And so when it comes to ROI, while what we've seen historically is that Shopify owners, I'm using Shopify, but I should say D2C. I'm not trying to promote Shopify here whatsoever.
Understood.
D2C brand owners, if you think about volume of new product launch per year or per 2 years, whatever time frame you look at, versus an Amazon average product launch a year, you will tend to see that Shopify will launch less products a year. Why? Because they are much more sharp about the type of products they will launch, versus on Amazon sellers and even us, we will launch much more products because oftentimes the failure ratio will just be higher on Amazon because of the gap of data that you have on Amazon versus Shopify on your end consumer.
So I just want to clarify something. When you say customer data, if I have brand registry on Amazon, I can go in, I can pull brand analytics reports that tell me the demographics of my customers. I think you're talking about something beyond that when you talk about customer data in DTC. Can you tell me more what you're talking about when you say customer data?
Yeah, it's a good one. So on Amazon, you will get customer data on like geography, income, gender, very broad. What you have on Shopify is you actually have you have a direct contact with the consumer. So you can have we typically do a lot of surveys. We do a lot of A/B testing. We connect with them to understand where they've been shopping recently, where they haven't been shopping recently, what are they sensitive to. And so once you have this like email, I would say it's typically emails. Once you have this like emailing group or social media followers, you can go to the next layer of data understanding that is not only around the macro data, you can get micro data. And so, for example, if you ask a consumer, we have a baby brand, and you ask the consumer, we ask the consumer, what are the most important 5 products you bought for your newborn in the last year. This is something you cannot know on Amazon. You can probably check the keywords trend, and you will get a sense of potentially where it goes. But when you have an email group of 100,000 mothers and fathers that actually have kids, when you ask them that question and you get data back, you can be so much more targeted in product innovation. That's the next level of data I'm talking about.
Jen and Colin, I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of the types of customer data that you're able to acquire and leverage once you build out your DTC business.
Yeah, we actually internally have something called our customer feedback loop, and great, you can read reviews and such like that on Amazon, but we literally have conversations with our customers, and like Ruben talked about, oh, we have post-purchase surveys. We're always looking at failed searches on our site. So what are people coming to us and looking for in terms of like product? Maybe there's something that we don't offer that people are actually coming and saying, I really wish that this brand offered this thing. We internally have also used our micro data, as Ruben mentioned, into creating customer cohorts. So we have, it's not just men and women at this percentage around this age range. We literally have this is our 25 to 35 range, and this is what they buy. And this is our 35 to 45 at this income level. This is what they buy. And so we can even segment messages, right, to our different cohorts. We can segment our ad content to different cohorts. And that way you can be a little bit more sniper than shotgun, which Amazon is probably more shotgun, and D2C is a bit more sniper.
Colin, what are you seeing successful DTC brands doing to leverage and build out better customer knowledge and understanding than what they might have been able to do on Amazon? Sorry, if you can unmute, please.
Yeah, I have a horrible tendency of doing
It's all
that.
good. It's all good.
I do it all the time. So the biggest thing that I would say that you can leverage on D2C, and it's a little bit outside the scope of data, but it's relevant to data, is offer development, right? Like you can actually create offers, especially like, you can pivot and iterate on different offers and different offerings to your customer, especially when you're doing like new customer acquisition, right? You can create value in your offers that will allow you to sell your product through D2C a little bit. You can be a little bit more versatile than you can on Amazon, because you can't be pivoting and touching your listing all the time, right? So if you're in a position where you are understanding what offers work best for your customers, what offerings that you can sell to people on the back end of the on the LTV side of the business, you have a lot more leverage there than just saying being able to sell a single product. Because then we get into like high level offer development is not rooted in like a coupon code on Amazon. It's actually rooted in value. So once you really start to understand what your customer derives value from, you actually start to gain more knowledge on your customer, because you say, my customer, like we use offer development as a major part of what we do for new customer acquisition. So as part of like ecosystems that we build, we'll have a really high converting offer. Well, at least we think it's going to be high converting. That's like a free premium. So you get like a free gift with your purchase, right?
Okay.
It's not a bundle, it's a free gift with purchase. So now you can take a product that maybe, one of our brands is a pretty big pet brand, and they were selling a pet oil, right? A salmon oil. And that salmon oil would sell, but it doesn't have, back to what Jen and I were talking about earlier, it doesn't have a strong, unique selling proposition, right? So we needed to add something to give it some value. Well, they had this paw balm. It's like chapstick for your dog's paws. It's a $20 product, but their cost of goods on it was only like $2. So we gave people the free paw balm with the oil. So we knew that people wanted the paw balm. They just didn't want to pay for it to try it. So what ended up happening was we paired them together, and now the sales spiked for the paw balm 30, 60 days later, because people started using it. But had we not included it in the offer, we wouldn't have known that. It would have just been a stale product, a product that people didn't want.
So why not build a virtual bundle on Amazon? You're using FBA, you've got these two different products. Let's try bundling together.
I have the perfect answer for that, because I have data behind this. So there's a difference between positioning something as a free gift and positioning something as a bundle. Consumers will have a tendency to feel like they're paying more for something they don't want. So I don't want the paw balm. I just want the salmon oil. Why am I paying $10 more, even though they're giving me a discount on it? I don't want the salmon oil. I'm paying more for something I don't want. Whereas if you position it as a free gift, the value, it actually adds to the value of the product. So it actually turns a $30 purchase into technically a $50 purchase, but it only costs you as a seller $1.20 to add $20 of value. So now you can start putting product in people's hands for less, in terms of reducing cost per acquisition, but you're also gathering data to say like, oh wow, this offer works really well. People want the free paw balm. They want to try it. The first time I ever did it was in 2015, and I did it with a free frother. This is before frothers were like really like went on their little frother, roller coaster ride, right?
Yeah.
I did a free frother, and it was $1.37 sourced even at low MOQs, but at the time I could put a $20 value behind it, and a free gift like a frother, we would see it in the comments on Facebook. It'd be like, oh, I bought this for the frother, I hope the product is good. So we knew that the frother was something that we could actually add on the site to start selling. And sure enough, a nice little lift in AOV and order volume, because people started buying the frother. So for me, offer development, it sounds like a little bit like it's like a shade of gray of whether it's data or not, but you can get really high level information about what your consumers' purchasing habits are going to be for products that are stagnant, that aren't moving. Maybe they want to try it, they just don't want to pay for it at first.
Yeah.
And then you could do something like that, and you've got that data. Now you can start getting people who have bought that bundle to say, hey, get 20% off, 30% off the Paul bomb. And if they've used it, they're going to be inclined to purchase it.
Let's shift gears off this concept of data, and I want to talk about the whole process of actually fulfilling orders. You grew up on Amazon using FBA. Life's pretty grand because you just ship pallets of stuff into Amazon. Amazon takes care of all the order fulfillment. Now you're using a DTC site. All of a sudden, you may be splitting inventory. You may be looking at some alternative fulfillment service to be able to satisfy the shipping needs for your DTC customers. Maybe you can't afford to be able to do 1 to 2 day shipping like Amazon FBA is able to provide for your Amazon business. How do you start that process of saying, oh my goodness, I need to actually fulfill these orders? If I am successful and start to get some decent DTC traffic and hence volume, I don't want to be packing boxes. How do you think this through? What did you do, Jen, to make that process work?
Yeah, again, we came from the DTC world early on. So we were doing DTC in 2010. And so we had experience running our own warehouse. So it wasn't daunting to us per se. So here's my thing. We always had our own. We actually even created our own FBA prep company that's still running, River Source Logistics. Here's the thing. If you are just starting out and you're using Shopify, you can use a plugin on Shopify to do multi-channel fulfillment from your Amazon FBA inventory. Mm-hmm. So overcomplicate it, do the simplest thing, because getting plugged in with a 3PL, all of that stuff, it can be a pretty heavy lift. Once you start seeing volume and you need to start accounting for this D2C traffic as this additional channel, then it's a natural evolution to, exploring alternative 3PLs. But to keep it easy when you're starting off, like leverage Amazon, you're still going to use their FBA. It's a simple plugin on Shopify. So I would keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Warehousing is its own huge business that I promise you, if D2C scares you, you don't want to be in the warehousing business. That's a whole different beast.
Ruben, how do you think about the whole fulfillment of DTC versus fulfillment of marketplaces like Amazon?
That's the most complicated piece, to be honest. The good thing is that I know Jin mentioned it online here, but MCF has been helpful. We are also using Deliver as kind of like a pretty, interesting platform. I think they were acquired by Shopify recently. Were they carved out again? I'm not sure, but they were acquired by Shopify officially. And they've been great partners. I think at the end of the day, what's most complicated, it's not necessarily DTC fulfillment. It's more, in my opinion, wholesale fulfillment is the most complicated out of all. So as long as you have a partner that is like a Deliver or even Amazon MCF, things are pretty efficient. You have some more specific as it comes to some of the codes that you need to use. Yep. But other than that, I would say we've tried a bunch of services to eventually realize that Deliver and MCF are probably the most helpful, at least for us.
Colin, anything you want to add with regards to fulfillment?
I didn't do it this time. No, I think they hit it right on the head. And I think that, one of the things that Jen brought up, which was really important, is just understanding where you're at in the journey too, right? Like where are you? Where do you want to be? And she's right, because once you start to get at scale in D2C, especially with all the things we can do on the back end, it's going to be a lot of work if you're doing it on your own. So you have to be prepared. Then you have you have logistical challenges too, because let's say you run special offers that you don't offer on Amazon, right? Like
Yep.
you have to understand, like there's going to be certain things that you can sell and fulfill from one location that you probably can't fulfill in another. So you just have to be aware of that. But for the most part, no, that was right on the money. That's right in line with all of our clients are doing.
And maybe I just want to add a few words on that, just based
Please.
on our experience with several clients of ours. It seems that the logistic part is relatively solved as today. Also for DTC brands, there are various offerings that are waiting for sellers out there, and then serving the clients, same day or within 2 days as of orders. This is also achievable today, so it's not a big deal at all. And maybe another benefit is that payment for the delivery, to your home, usually is collected on top of the product price, and it is not being perceived by many customers as part of the purchase price. So this is another opportunity for kind of good economic results altogether.
So you're saying you can get away charging shipping rather than having to compete with free shipping that marketplaces might otherwise be able to offer.
Yeah, what I see, I mean, the way you present it may sound a bit troublesome, but yes, I think according to what I see, it works. So you have a price, I don't know, $100, that's the price of your product, and then another $13 just to get it at your home within 2 days as a purchase, and it works.
Colin, you've been helping clients do this for a long time. I'd love your thoughts around common misperceptions that I might have as an Amazon-centric brand around what it's going to take for me to succeed in DTC. Where are things today versus where they might have been 5 years ago when I first started my Amazon business? What do I need to be adjusting my thoughts and saying, actually, it's not as scary here. It might be a little bit scarier here. Help me think that through.
So if we're thinking in the landscape of in D2C, right? Like we need to look at what the D2C landscape looks like. So, back in the day, like I sound so old saying that, but I've been doing this for a while, but 2012, 2017 was like gold. It's like just low traffic costs, data was just dialed in. You could really bet on like a volume game. Those days are like, I would say, all but gone. It's very rare that you see a product just fly because it just flies. It happens, but it's not common. One of the things that I think really needs to be understood is you're going to have to go back to the root of direct response advertising. You're going to need direct response offers. You're going to need to understand how to do high level copywriting or at some extent high level. But more importantly, you can't solely rely on just driving traffic to one of your assets and relying on a volume model to have it convert and be profitable.
Okay.
Back in the day, you could probably get away with that. Back in the day, I could probably send, I know it because I did it. You could send traffic to a very basic product display page, a basic PDP on a direct-to-consumer channel. And because the traffic was so low and it was so dialed in, you could actually bet that you could convert profitably, if not at break even, right? The days of that happening are they're not gone, but they're very few and far between. The only thing that you rely on to grow your business is just driving traffic, and that's a very Amazon-centric mindset, because that is the gas that fuels the fire. You need traffic, and then the PDP gives a false sense of like what should happen on direct to consumer, because on Amazon PDP, if I have a 5%, 6% conversion rate on a landing page that I build on D2C, I'm in really, really good shape, especially if I'm working with the kind of products I want. If an Amazon seller is dealing with a 5 or 6% conversion rate on their listing, they're calling in the ambulance, the Amazon ambulance. You know what I mean? That's just not going to happen. So the landscape is such that you never want to be in a position where, as an Amazon seller, I can tell you one place you don't want to be is, in a lot of cases, trying to trade one headache for another. Right? Like you can't make it work on Amazon. So you're like, let me go on to Shopify or direct to consumer. Doesn't mean it can't work, but they typically don't want to be the catalyst. Like, I hate it here. I might be more profitable here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not a great exchange. So I just think the landscape is very different. Back in the day, 5 years ago, you could probably get away with just running traffic and betting that the traffic was so cheap or was so much more cost efficient in relation to how dialed in and pinpointed it was, that you could probably get away with that type of model. These days, you really need, like I said, we build ecosystems. So it's like offer development. You need copywriting. You need really solid advertising assets. You need things that are like really going to move the needle forward outside of just, I'm going to pay Facebook to send traffic. I'm going to send Google to
Yep.
send
Yep.
traffic. You know, that's my 2 cents there.
Jen, if you were doing this all over and you were launching DTC right now, what would you need to do differently than a few years back?
Man, that's an amazing question. And it's something that like I'm always thinking about. And this is gonna sound, and I don't know if Colin and Ruben are even gonna agree with me. I would start by creating some sort of influence, right? I would start by becoming an authority in some sort of space that I want to go into.
Okay.
And literally putting out the best, most engaging quality content, being very transparent. And then I would start talking about what's wrong with the products and why mine's better and what I'm doing to fix the issue, right? So if we're talking baby, right? I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So I'm still like kind of in that world. If I'm talking about travel strollers, I'm going to pick apart every single like travel stroller on the market, even if it's at my own cost, because I think that
Yep.
adds
Yep.
my authenticity and, at my authority in that space. And I would talk about why it's all broken. And then you know what? I would offer the best damn travel stroller that I could make out there. And then the bag. And then and then I would build out the product line there, because like I think that people are tired of being marketed to, which is why we've seen this huge shift of like regular people talking about stuff and then people highly converting there. And that's not to say that the channel would be D2C or Amazon, but I would start from the content and authority side first and establish myself, because it's going to be so much easier to drive it either to Amazon or to my D2C channel. And that's maybe like a weird left field kind of thing, but that's where my brain goes. If I were to start
For the guy that's building a private label brand on Amazon today, you're saying, okay, at the same time, go become an influencer and a content specialist on whatever category products you're in, so that when the time is right that you're going to launch DTC, you've actually got people following your recommendations or your reviews. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I would say that. Or if you're like, hey, I don't want to be in front, like I would start creating this network of people that you can like leverage at that time. So it's like, it's not building this email list or this SMS list or, like your, many chat flows that people used to do. It's not that anymore. It's people talking about your product, people that like people trust, not just some randos, but people that like genuinely
Yep.
trust their opinion. I
Yep.
think it's all about influence.
I want to add, because what Jen is saying is actually really, because like I said a couple minutes ago, I feel like sometimes like the bringer of doomsday to people when it comes to their brands. What Jen is saying is actually really like it's super accurate, because that is the way to mitigate risk going into D2C, right? Like what she's saying is like, if all this stuff, because we're at this, when we're discussing, we're all kind of discussing at scale. We're discussing things big, everything's moving fast. We're thinking in 7-figure. That's just the way we all probably are conditioned to think. What Jen is saying is that like, if you are somebody that really just genuinely believes that you should be on D2C and it's a channel you want to explore, and this all like the landing pages, the copywriting, the advertising assets, what she's saying is probably the only way, in my opinion, to actually go to market where you're minimizing risk, you're minimizing expenditures, you're giving your brand a voice. All of these platforms give you the opportunity for organic free traffic. You can test product market fit. You can do a lot of things that aren't going to cost you money, and you don't have to go and hire an agency. Fundamentally, you're becoming a content creator or an influencer of some sort, driving warm traffic and allowing people to come and buy your product at some point of conversion, which I can tell you with warm traffic, if you're a content creator, then you can start sending people to that PDP that I was just knocking. You can't do that with cold traffic, but you can damn sure do it with warm, high quality influencer traffic. They'll buy whatever the influencer or the person that they trust says. You know what I mean? So that's actually like a really great point that brings people back to like, hey, this is possible, and it's not scalable, or I don't want to say it's not scalable. It's not accurate. It might not be at the scale you're looking for right off the bat, but you may not want that scale right off the bat, to be honest with you. You might want to be just like learning your audience, reading the comments on social channels. Like, what are
Yeah.
people complaining about? What are they saying is great? I love your voice. I love your product. I just bought it last week. My baby loves it. You can't, there's really no amount of, there's not a price you can really put on that when you're doing it from that level and you're able to start growing incrementally.
Ruben, I want to shift gears here a little bit. Think about the DTC experiences you've had. What do you wish you had known before you got started in this? What you've made, we've all made mistakes. You think about some of the mistakes you've made. What do you wish you knew that would have set better expectations around this whole experience for you?
Yeah, I think Jin mentioned that very, very rightfully, and I cannot emphasize that enough. Creative is king in DTC, and every successful DTC brand has a compelling brand narrative and creative that connects with customers on the emotional level. Like, I always think about the example of liquid death water, which has done an incredible job in scaling so fast by really connecting with customers on an emotional level. So think like influencer marketing, TikTok, marketing approach that is really driven by reality. This can be true to a certain degree with some Amazon brands, but the platform is fundamentally different from DTC. And so virality that is driven by creative is not as significant on Amazon. And so where on Amazon you have like really product reviews and other factors that really drive visibility and success on the algorithm. On DTC it's different. So I think we would have double-clicked on message market fit at the time of launch, knowing that at the end of the day, this is the most important factor to a DTC success.
Mikhail, I want to bring you in this conversation. Based on what you've heard so far, you're having conversations with brands that are looking to at some point exit. DTC is hard, but may make sense for some brands. Help me think through from a financial perspective. If I'm a brand looking to sell, where does this whole discussion of DTC fit in? What are you hearing people ask? What are you telling people about DTC? Please give me your thoughts.
Yeah. So this question to some extent is a summary of all this discussion, because everything which was mentioned here is relevant eventually to considerations that are that should be taken towards potential sale of a business. So I think that as we've heard from the panelists here, if you want to build a real kind of brand, then probably you would want it to be presented and available not only on one channel, which is Amazon, but also DTC and potentially also other channels. Obviously, it's not everyone can do it, and it's mostly not because of the product and the story. It's not whether you can do it, but more how you should do it. So if you really want to go to and sell direct to customers, then you should be well prepared for that with everything that was mentioned here. And also, I liked a lot what Jin mentioned and Colin and Ruben about how they would approach their new DTC brand today. I think that various creative ways on how to launch your new brand should be considered. In addition, what was mentioned, like crowdfunding, so Kickstarter. Accompanied by strong agencies, marketing agencies there, like Jalop and others. These can support a lot launching brands, which is relatively cost effective. Subscription boxes can be also a creative way to kind of penetrate with your brand to a large audience and then get it back to your own website. But altogether, since we understand that with the presence on DTC, and the higher barriers that are associated with this, you actually can create a stronger business based on a stronger brand. The natural result of that, assuming that you're successful with doing that, is that you can get much higher valuation. At the end of the day, e-commerce businesses are valued as at some multiple applied on the EBITDA. last 12 months or next 12 months EBITDA. The better, the more solid and successful and better positioned for growth the business is, the higher a multiple can be obtained for such a business. So that's kind of the equation that everyone should consider before they're considering exiting and the timing for that. Maybe I can relate to some metrics here, but mainly and I'll start with mentioning that once you're selling your business, whatever it is, it must be a successful business if you want to get a good valuation. Successful business means that it should grow, it should have healthy margins, and it should be positioned for continued growth in the long term. It should be sustainable business. Margins and gross margins should be at least 60%, and potentially more. And then net margins should be not less than 15%. So no matter whether you operate your business on Amazon or out of Amazon, these are kind of the minimum thresholds that you should make sure that you can achieve. Of course, if you diversify to DTC, you should take into consideration cash flow management. You invest more in the growth of your business in more than one channel, you may have a need to invest more in working capital and have cash flow available to support the growth of the business. I think that with DTC, you get the DTC and the combination of DTC and Amazon channels for the same brand, you get several advantages. So the diversification of channel, it's a de-risking of dependency on one platform. That's a great advantage. And then also the flexibility, the ability to kind of maneuver between the two platforms and then generate demand with your email list, for example, to recently launch product on Amazon. You can improve your ranking there, and it's a low cost or non-cost promotion of your business. That's another advantage. So you can data collection, of course, the combination of all data that can be collected on Amazon and on DTC, it's an advantage. It should be mentioned that on Amazon you have the advantage of getting quite valuable data on your competitors, which is also also something that is useful and serve you to build your business. And with both channels, you get, of course, a better potentially better brand equity, which is an advantage. On the other side of things, the operational complexity should be taken into consideration.
Yes.
And as discussed here, there are good responses today to this matter, but you should be prepared. And also the focus it's important not to lose focus on what you're good at and to continue growing your brand. So just don't spread all over. At the same time, since to some extent it's more convenient to run your business on Amazon only, although it's not as easy as it used to be these days anywhere. It may be a bit addictive. So you may find yourself trying to pursue and promote your business on DTC, but at the same time dragging towards keeping on doing what is most easier for you. So that's kind of another risk. Of course, you need to follow different metrics when you manage your business both on Amazon and on your DTC channel, and for that you should be knowledgeable enough. So Amazon, usually Amazon sellers are focused on organic ranking and sales volume and reviews and rating. Then on DTC, you will look on, of course, on your traffic and the customer LTV and the cost of client acquisition and your retention rate, which is super important, of course. the AOV, we haven't discussed the average order value. All of these should be taken into account, and you should be able to manage those all. While if you sell the same products on both channels, that's maybe an issue. So that's kind of about the approach.
That's great. I want to wrap up our conversation today by asking Jen and Ruben and Colin specifically around some of the tools you found very useful for being able to find success in DTC. Ruben, do you want to start us off? Stuff that you've used, external tools, internal tools that have helped you specifically build out DTC.
Sure. So yeah, I can give a few tools that have been very helpful for us. Starting with advertising tool, we use Disco for targeted audiences on Meta and Google. We use Fermat for landing page builder.
Okay.
When it comes to website development, we really like WePromote because it's as almost no code or low code.
I'm sorry, that was Promote. You said was the name of the product?
WPromote.
WPromote. Mm-hmm.
WPromote. For content, we use Incense, which is influencer creator platform to source UGC, which is again, like I said, very important. For loyalty, we use Toki, Toki. And then one thing that is extremely important, especially when you have both Amazon and Shopify, both Amazon and D2C, business reporting. And so for reporting, as it comes to KPIs, P&Ls, promotion analysis, simulation, we're using a tool called Brandable, which is a tool that we had developed internally that we carved out of Forum Brands, and now we're selling independently to D2C owners and Amazon owners, but mainly D2C owners. And it's been very helpful to kind of like have full visibility for both Amazon and Shopify, reporting and data and KPIs.
Thank you, Ruben. Jen, anything you want to add in terms of tools that you found useful for being able to build out your DTC business?
Not specific tools. I will share a lesson is Shopify has amazing partners that do all of these amazing plugins. My feedback on that is just be choosy. Don't get too greedy because it slows down your site speed and that will bite you in the butt at some point. And so, just being very wise about, because it's very exciting to all of a sudden get an access to a huge suite of tools. So it's just being a little bit choosy in that. I think the other thing we use that Ruben didn't mention, we use retention.com to help grow our email list as well. That's been really cool tool that we've been playing with lately. It's been good.
Colin, anything you wanted to add? And I realize you're an agency and you may have your own tools, but external tools that you can talk about?
Almost did it again. The two that I think are the most valuable and can really, well, outside of what everybody else has mentioned, are probably the Creative Center. So Facebook Ads Library and TikTok Creative Center. Those are really gold mines because they give you insight into what's working, what your competitors are doing, what's kind of trending in the space, what type of advertising works. There's other things. There's other tools that I think are, when it comes to infrastructure, we use Pagefly for our landing pages that we build, which is great because if you're a new seller coming onto a Shopify platform, the first page is free, so you can learn how to build landing pages and create offers. So Pagefly has been a really great asset for us. We also use another app called One Click Upsell, which is really great for just if you have a couple of sales already coming in, it's great for maximizing average order value and profit. But I would say that for probably the audience that I know we've been kind of focusing this conversation towards, I think that the two best, if you're kind of coming into a socially native advertising, world, you got to understand what does that even look like, because a lot of people have a tendency to think that that the highest quality content right now is what's working. I literally just spoke with somebody the other day. I don't remember who it was, but he literally said to me, he was like, I have to get content and I have to get all this 4K content. And I for social advertising, I'm like, if you have a cell phone, you have pretty much everything you need to do advertising for socially native ads. So the best way to do that is to learn what everybody else in your landscape is doing, and whatever vertical you're in. Try and get on some trends, try and get on the
Yep.
platforms, learn how they work.
Yep.
That's what I would recommend early on.
We're at time at this point, and I want to thank you all for joining us, Jen and Colin and Ruben, Mikhail. Thank you all for joining us as we talked about this journey, moving your brand from beyond Amazon into DTC. We wish our attendees well and in this journey, and hopefully we will find you in the world of DTC soon enough. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you very
Thanks.
much. Bye.
Everyone.